Hey everyone, I think we're live. I see a little pop-up box that is greeting me from NaNoWriMo to everyone live. So thank you so much for attending this special revision webcast. I want to thank you for writing your novels with us, of course, but also thank you just for having the chutzpah to revise your novels. I think this is going to be super fun. And in particular, I like revising better than drafting. I've talked to people who like drafting better than revising, but hopefully you'll enjoy both parts of that process, especially after this webcast. And wanted to say that this is the first of 4 webcasts featuring Jessica Brody and Christina Stanley, who I will introduce momentarily. And what I think is interesting is that NaNoWriMo, of course, we do focus on locking up your editor and writing with abandon and reveling in that wonderful creative process of writing your rough draft. But what I'll say for revision, I think the reason I like it is just that it deepens my experience of the story. And I get to think more deeply about the characters, more deeply about the plot, and more deeply about just the story construction itself. And so that's why I like it. I also get just to noodle around with words. So you can get that kind of micro, I'll come up with a new term for me, micro joy of working with words and text, and also that macro big picture joy of working with the bigger story. And I always think of this Karen Russell. Karen Russell wrote a pep talk for us a number of years ago. And she said, and I've seen other authors say this, that 90% of her rough draft doesn't make it into her final draft, which means revision is also about writing, and it's about making a lot of decisions. And I think that that's what's going to be interesting about today's revision webcast is Jessica and Christina talking about those decision points and how to make those decisions. So I know I'm going to learn a lot from this. And with that, I want to introduce, we've got Jessica Brody, and she's a NaNoWriMo writer. She's written more than 20 novels, and several of them were penned during NaNoWriMo. And she's also written this amazing guide. It's a best-selling it's a plotting guide, but I use it actually in 2 ways. I use it during my novel planning, but I also use it in my revision. So think about using this in revision as well. And Jessica is the founder of Writing Master Academy, and she's worked with editors at all the major publishing houses, so she has really a lot of deep revision knowledge. And then we've got Christina Stanley, who has this fascinating experience of having a degree in computer mathematics, and then also a lot of success as a best-selling award-winning author and NaNoWriMo participant as well. So we're going to hear more about how those two supposedly very different skill sets come together with Fictionary and revision. She's the founder and CEO of Fictionary, and she's also a Fictionary certified story coach editor, and she is the story editing advisor to the Alliance of Independent Authors and was on the board of directors for the Story Studio Writing Society. So welcome, Jessica and Christina.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. So it's so nice to be here.
Yeah, well, I want to, before we kick it off, you guys have put together not only this revision webcast series, which we'll talk more about, but you also have special discounts on Writing Mastery Academy and Fictionary. So I was wondering, Jessica, if you could start us off with telling us a little bit about Writing Mastery Academy and that discount.
Yeah, absolutely. So Writing Mastery Academy is an online platform that gives you access to all of my online courses. There's about 10 right now, including the complete novel revision course. We also do live webinars, and we have bonus content, a community, and that's all available for $15 a month, unlimited access to everything. But for NaNoWriMo participants, we are offering the first 3 months at half off. So that's only $7.50 a month. Or if you want to do a yearly plan, there's a $30 discount. So $130 a year instead of $160. So I think all the information's in the YouTube description.
Cool. And 30% of those proceeds then support NaNoWriMo as well.
That's right.
Yeah. You're getting like a double, I don't know, you're getting a lot for your money there. So, and we appreciate it because we're a nonprofit and we need support to make this all happen.
And we love supporting you.
Thank you so much. And Christina, let's hear more about Fictionary and Fictionary's special offer.
Yeah, so Fictionary is a software tool for writers. StoryTeller is our writer product, and we have another one, Story Coach, for professional editors. And what we're going to work through tonight is our writer product. And it's a tool that helps writers perform a story edit. So a very high level, let's look at the structure, character, plot, and setting of a story, not copy editing or proofreading. And the intent is to get a writer from, a NaNoWriMo first draft to a really great story. And also know that when you're at that moment that you have a solid structure and a solid story. And tonight, what we're going to do is we're looking at Jessica's process for revising her full novel revision course, which maps beautifully into Fictionary software. And so we decided to come together to not only show you the process of what you need to do, but also give you a tool of how you can do it quickly and efficiently. And so basically we have the same discount offers as Writing Mastery Academy. It's 50% off the first 3 months. And then what did we give for the annual? Something $30 off.
Yeah, I think it's the same.
I think it's the same as Jessica. So I'm just saying the same as Jessica, but the information's all there in the bottom. I didn't know I was going to ask this question.
Cool. Well, yeah, all the information is there, both on our website and I think in the YouTube description. And we can talk more about that. But I wanted to just give everyone meeting logistics. So Jessica and Christina are going to give this amazing presentation on revision, the first of 4. And if you can put your questions in chat, our producer, Catherine, will pass them along to us and we'll try to answer them all about a 45-minute mark. So presentation will last about 45 minutes and then 15 minutes of chat, and we'll try to do it all. So I'm going to turn it over to Jessica and Christina to teach us about revision.
All right, I am going to share my screen here. Okay, can everyone see?
Yep, it's there.
Yes, we did it. Okay, so today we're going to walk you through my tried and true process for revising with an organized, structured plan, which is so much better than the other way, which we'll talk about in a minute. So by the end of today, you will have a very solid understanding of what I call the level down revision method is, why it works, why it's better than the way most people revise. We will also give you an organized revision strategy that you can apply to your novel starting today. You will leave today with a plan for preparing your manuscript for the first level of the revision. So these are steps that you can take as soon as you get off this webinar and start preparing your novel for revision. And as Christina said, you are going to be introduced to a great new tool to simplify and streamline your entire revision process that works with these strategies that I will be presenting to you. So the strategies I'm presenting today are taken straight from my complete novel revision course, which is a huge, huge course. And I've kind of given you the highlights here so you can get started on your revision. And if you want to dive deeper, of course, I have the course on the Writing Mastery Academy. But most of all, what you're going to leave here today with is confidence that you can revise that NaNoWriMo novel. I know a lot of people look at a revision and just get super overwhelmed and just kind of put it away and never touch it again because the idea of trying to make it work when it's so messy feels insurmountable. So hopefully after today, that will be a feeling of the past. You will be very confident that you can actually do this. Okay. So before we get into the revision process that we're going to walk you through over the next 4 webinars, I'm going to tell you how most authors revise. Let me know if this feels a little familiar to you. This is how most authors tackle revision. They turn to page 1 and they start revising. And that means they're attempting to rewrite scenes, fix character development, restructure the plot, add subplots, delete subplots, polish clunky sentences, flesh out world building, fix inconsistencies, find the perfect word to describe the sky on page 245, and all at the same time. If you're feeling overwhelmed just looking at this list, there's a reason for that, because this is a very overwhelming way to revise. This method is unfocused because it's really hard to do one task well because you're trying to do multiple types of tasks at once. It's inefficient because you're bound to do more work than you need. When you're polishing sentences at the same time as restructuring the plot, you're probably going to rewrite the same thing over and over again and then not need it later on when you actually restructure that plot. So it's definitely an inefficient method. It's also very disorganized. It's really difficult to track yourself and your progress and keep yourself accountable when you're jumping all over the story, doing all these different types of things at once or attempting to. Also, it's overwhelming, as you probably felt when you were looking at that list. It's impossible to hold all of these types of revision tasks in your head at once, while at the same time holding your entire story in your head at once. It just leads to a sense of overwhelm, and far too often it leads authors to quit revising, usually after a few chapters. And also the revision feels never ending because you're constantly doing the same work over and over instead of dividing it into a nice, organized, structured process. I know all of this because this is how I revised my novels for years, until I figured out that there was a better way, a different way, a more organized approach to revision, which I have now calling the level down revision method. So this revision method has been developed from my experience revising over 20 novels with major publishers. My books are published with Simon Schuster, Random House, Macmillan. I also work with Disney Press to write books. So I based this method on my own experience, but also on my experience working with professional editors, seeing how they approach the revision process with their authors, interviewing those editors, and also interviewing a lot of authors on their process as well. So basically what the level down revision does is it breaks the revision process into levels, or what you can also call passes through the manuscript. So each time you're passing through your manuscript, you're approaching a different type of task. This allows you to focus on one area of development at a time. So it works from a macro level, seeing your story from the huge macro level, and then working down and down into further, more micro level views of your story so that you're getting the big picture in place before you're doing that nitty gritty work. This helps with a lot of those problems that we identified before, because it allows you to focus on one level or type of revision task at a time. It provides a structured and organized method for tackling a revision. And if I'm going a little fast through this, it's because I want to get all the way through, but remember that this will be on YouTube forever, so you can always come back and watch it. And if you want to follow along while you're doing your revision, I do have all of this information in a free revision Kickstart guide, which you can download at writingmastery.com/nowwhat. So it's going to go through everything we're going to talk about today, all of the steps we're going to go through, and it's all available. You can download it for free. So check out that writingmastery.com/nowwhat, and you can get your revision guide there. And it's going to go through everything we're going to go through, and probably a little bit more detail as well. I think that's also in the description link. Okay, so here's what the level down revision looks like at a glance. It starts with a first draft, and you first approach the story level revision. And I'm going to talk about each of these revision levels in a little bit more detail coming up. Then once you get the story locked into place, you're going to move down into what's called the scene level revision, where you revise scene by scene. Once your scenes are locked into place and polished and feeling great, then you're going to get down to the page level revision, which is the kind of the most minute detail, the most nitty-gritty revision work. And by the time you finish the page level revision, you will have a final draft. Doesn't that look nice and tidy and organized? Yes, it does. Okay. So let's get into the individual revision levels. It's important that you recognize and that you understand what these levels are and how to approach each one, because when you start to approach your own manuscript, you're going to want to start to sort your ideas and your tasks and your notes into levels. So you always know that you're doing the right thing at the right time to keep yourself from getting overwhelmed and to make sure you're efficient and focused and all of that. And so we're going to go through each revision level. I'm going to give you some examples of tasks that you might find at these levels. And then after that, I'm going to take you through the steps that you can take right away to start preparing for this level down revision process with your own manuscript. And then Christina's going to show us how to do all of it in Fictionary. Okay, so the story level revision, that's that big picture. In publishing, they call this the developmental edit because you're developing the story. It is a big picture revision where you're focusing on things like structure, plot, character development, character arcs, big picture world building, and pacing, which is very important. So I like to think of this level as looking at your story from the International Space Station. So think about the Earth from space. You can't see trees, you can't see cities, you can see giant land masses, you can see mountains, you can see oceans. Those are the big picture things that you're going to be wanting to maneuver and moving around at the story level. This is what you do when you develop your story at a developmental edit. You're not working with the little minute details, you're working with a very big picture, because it's important that you can see your entire entire story at once, hold it in your head so that you can organize it and structure it correctly and most efficiently. So think about it from the International Space Station. You can see almost the entire Earth at once, but you can't see all those little nitty-gritty details. In the story level revision, you're going to be asking yourself questions like, is my structure solid? Do all the right beats come at the right time? Am I revealing information in an engaging way? Meaning, am I info dumping a lot here when I could be building scenes to show that information instead? Does my story have enough goals, conflicts, stakes, and tension, things that will pass through the entire story? A primary goal might travel through the entire story. So you want to get that locked into place early enough so that it'll affect as it affects the entire story. Is my world building complete and immersive? Have I figured out my entire world? This is especially important for fantasy and sci-fi stories. Do I have all those big world building pieces in place? It's really hard to start editing a really tiny description of one little town when you haven't figured out how that town fits into the grand scheme of things. So doing that big picture world building is important at this level too. Does my character transform? Do I take them on a journey? Is there an arc, a compelling character arc? And do all my subplots and side characters serve the story? Because if not, those are things you're going to want to start removing from your story, which is going to affect the entire story. So these are all kinds of questions you want to be asking at the story level. Once you get the story locked into place, that's when you can move into the scene level revision. This is actually one of my favorite, this is my favorite revision level. In publishing terms, it's called the detail edit. So this is a medium level view where you're revising each scene as though it's its own mini story. So if we take the story as a whole, and now we're breaking it down into its essence, which are the building blocks of story, which are scenes. If you treat every single scene like its own mini story and make sure that those scenes themselves are strong, then every building block of your story is going to be fantastic. So this is the level where you're going to be working on scene pacing, scene structure, essential scene elements like goals and conflicts of the scene level. I like to think of this as looking at your story from the airplane window. So we're not at the space level now. We're zoomed in a little bit, but we're still too high above the ground to start seeing like sidewalks and people and individual leaves on the trees. We can see smaller bits of pieces at once. So we can't see the whole story at once. We're seeing smaller pieces. We're seeing rivers. We're seeing maybe some houses. We're seeing some trees, but we're not seeing the real detailed stuff. That's how I like to look at the scene level. At the scene level, you'll be asking yourself questions like, are my scenes balanced and well-paced? Do I have too much dialogue, not enough dialogue? Do I have too much information right up front in the scene that can be moved throughout the scene? Do all my scenes start in the right place? Am I dropping my reader at the start of every scene at the most compelling moment? These are the kinds of things you should be asking at the scene level. Does every scene have a goal and a conflict of its own? We have story level goals, but we should also have scene level goals and scene level conflict as well. Does every scene have a purpose? If not, probably should get rid of that scene or revise it so that it does have a good purpose. Are my scenes told through the right perspective? So if you're writing multiple points of view, obviously you have multiple choices of who's going to narrate which scene. So deciding who's going to narrate a scene is a great scene level choice. And finally, when you get the scenes down exactly the way you want them and you've polished them and they're really great, that's when you can move on to the page level revision. The page level revision in the publishing world is called the line edit. There's a very good reason for that. It's because you are going line by line. It's a very zoomed in view when you're revising each page line by line, focusing on things like polishing those sentences, getting that perfect sentence structure. Your word choice, are these really the right words? Is there a better word? Is this adverb really necessary here? Do I really need this dialogue tag? The nitty gritty editing work. This is where that happens. A lot of writers try to do this in the story level when they're trying to get their big picture in place. They're trying to kind of finesse those sentences. But this just leads to wasted time because you can spend, as we know, we're all writers, we can spend hours perfecting one sentence or paragraph. But if that paragraph's going to just get dumped the next day because it doesn't work in the whole story, you've just wasted a lot of time polishing that sentence. So this is on the road view. We have gone from the International Space Station to the airplane, and now we are on the road. We are navigating the turns. We're seeing the leaves, the blades of grass, the people's eyes, their freckles, whatever all the details, we're seeing it now, and we are working with those details. This is where you're going to be asking yourself questions like, is everything on this page necessary? Do I need that dialogue tag? Do I need that adverb? Do I need that one sentence there? Or is the whole page stronger without? Are my sentences repetitive? Am I using the same structure of sentences over and over? Am I using too much passive voice? Is my dialogue realistic, or does it feel a little cheesy? Am I using all the best words, or are there some better words I could be swapping out here? This is all page level stuff that we should wait to actually conquer in the page level once our story and our scenes are in place. So that is the level down revision method. And here's why it works so well. One, it keeps you focused. It allows you to dedicate all your efforts on one type of revision task, so you get really good at that task. If you're only focusing on structure, you can dedicate all your brain power just to structure and not have to worry about finding the right word or making sure the scene has a goal. If you're just focused on one thing at a time, you're going to be more focused. You're also going to be more efficient at that task. You're not going to be doing superfluous work. You're going to be dedicating every moment that you have of your revision time to the right task at the right time. It's going to keep you organized. You have trackable goals now to work towards. I have to get through the story level. I have to get that story done. Then I have to get through the scene level. And now I have individual scenes that are trackable goals for me to work towards. And it breaks down the story into more achievable steps, the whole process. Just going, I'm going to revise my novel is a daunting task, but saying I'm just going to work on the story level creates a nice achievable goal that you can celebrate when you finish. It's also empowering because it makes you feel confident that one, you're doing the right thing at the right time. You're not doing things you don't need to be doing. You're worrying about the right things at the right moment. And it keeps the revision feeling doable and controllable. And you can end every level with a sense of victory. And it does feel like a victory when you're finally ready to move on to that next level. Okay. So now that you understand what the level down revision method looks like, I'm going to give you some steps on how to prepare your manuscript for the story level revision. Because in the next workshop, which is going to be in 2 weeks, we're actually going to dive into the first level, the story level. But first, there are some things that you'll need to do to really prepare yourself, get yourself organized, and so that the whole revision process will be more streamlined and be easier to tackle. So how to prepare your manuscript for the story level revision. There are 3 steps that you can take between now and our next webinar to get yourself all ready to go and set yourself up for success. The first step, I'm going to go through all 3 steps really quickly here. Then we're going to go into more detail on each. So this is just an overview of the process. The first step is to complete what's called a hands-off read-through, in which you'll be taking notes. The second step is to organize your ideas into revision levels. And the third step is to create your first draft storyboard. So I'm going to walk you through what it takes to do each of those steps, and then I'm going to turn it over to Christina, and she's going to show you how these steps actually work really well with Fictionary. Okay, so step 1, complete a hands-off read-through and take notes. This is when you read through your entire manuscript without editing a single word. If that sounds hard, it is. It is very hard. It's actually one of the hardest steps that you're going to take in this revision process, but it is absolutely essential. It's also essential that you do it as quickly as possible. There's a lot of reasons to do it as quickly as possible. I'll get into some here, but mostly because it's sometimes a very cringeworthy process and you're going to want to finish it fast. But doing it in 1 to 2 sittings, like just sitting down and reading through every page that you have without touching anything, is going to help you accomplish a lot of things. You can use different tools to accomplish this. You can use a PDF if you want, so that you can't edit. You can put it on an e-reader, which makes it very hard to edit. You can also use Fictionary, and Christina will show you how you can go scene by scene, take notes as you go. But you're going to want to record all your revision notes that you have separately. I think I have something coming up about that. Yeah. Okay. So you're going to want to record all your revision notes in a separate place so that when you have ideas, because as you read, you're going to have ideas. You're going to want to change things. You're going to want to rewrite that piece of dialogue. You're going to want to take out that character. You're going to want to move that scene around. That's all great. Write those ideas down somewhere. You're not going to do them yet, because as soon as you start revising as you go, your whole process becomes disorganized. Then you just fall back into that old revision method where you're trying to do everything at once and you're not able to keep track of what actually needs to be done and what has been done. So, but you definitely want to record notes as you go. And Christine is going to show you that Fictionary has a great place to do this. Okay, so why do we do this? Why do we do this really difficult step of hands-off read-through? One, because it gives you a snapshot of your story. It is really, really hard to hold your entire story in your head. It's also probably been a while. If you're revising your NaNoWriMo novel, it's been a couple months, right, before you've actually even thought about it or looked at it. So you might not even remember what you wrote. You might not know that you have this great scene on page 40 that you forgot you even wrote because it was on November 10th or whatever. So it allows you to hold that entire story in your head, but also reminds you of what you have. And when you read it really quickly, you'll see the glaring gaps of what you do need to add. But if you start revising, you're just going to lose track of the story. You're going to get pulled into the story, and you're going to lose that kind of macro level view that this hands-off read-through is meant to give you. So it keeps you from wanting to start editing the other way, which is just the fast track to getting overwhelmed. So this is a very hard step, and I know you're going to struggle with it because we all struggle with it, but it is a very important step. And I definitely highly recommend you do it. Okay, step 2. Once you've done your hands-off read-through, you've taken notes, you've put them somewhere else, now you need to organize those notes. So we need to look at what we have to do and start putting it into what I call revision levels. So the quickest way to do that is to start asking yourself questions. For every note or revision idea that you have, ask yourself this first. Does this idea affect the entire story or multiple scenes or chapters in the story? If the answer is yes, then it is probably a story level revision. If it's adding a character, then yeah, that character is going to probably be in the rest of the story, and therefore it's going to affect more than just one scene. It's going to affect the entire story. The next question to ask yourself is, does this idea affect only one scene or chapter? Like, is it that I just need to actually move this one scene into a different location, and it's not necessarily going to change the rest of the story, but that scene itself is going to change because it's a new location? If the answer is yes, that is a scene level revision. Then ask yourself, does this idea affect only this page? If I take out this one line of dialogue, is it going to affect the whole story? Is it going to affect scenes after this? Probably not. If it only affects that one page, then it is a page level revision. This might be hard to do at first. Don't stress. You can always change your mind later, but it's helpful to start sorting your revision ideas into these levels, because guess what? Then you have 2 stacks of revision tasks that you don't even have to worry about right now. You only have to focus on the story level stuff first. And it is really, really satisfying to say, all of these other things, page level, scene level, all these other notes, I will get to those later. And here's the best part. Once you finish that story level revision, you're going to find that half of those scene level and page level notes that you took during your read-through don't apply anymore. And look at all that time you just saved from doing those all at once while you were trying to do everything else. That's sort of the beauty of the level down revision. Once you've organized your notes, step 3 is to build your first draft storyboard. I think this is where you're going to find Fictionary is really, really going to help you. What is a storyboard? Okay, a storyboard is a macro level view of your story, broken down by scenes or chapters. It helps you see your whole story at once, and so that you can later start maneuvering big pieces. If you've never created a storyboard before, this is such an important step, and it's going to be your revision best friend, because it helps you see the big picture, and it helps you play out revision scenarios on a storyboard as opposed to in your actual manuscript. So when you say to yourself, I think I'd really like to move this scene earlier, instead of actually moving the scene and then revising all the stuff that happens after it, and then deciding that the scene doesn't actually go there, you've just saved yourself a bunch of work by simply moving the card or the scene itself on the storyboard. You're moving that, and then you're looking at the rest of the story from that macro level view to see how it might affect the rest of the story. So I like to play out scenarios of different revision ideas on my storyboard. So it becomes a snapshot of your story. So how you create your storyboard is you condense each scene or chapter into a 1 to 2 sentence description. What does that mean? Well, it means that you're going to want to include things like primary characters, major events, important emotions, and important settings only if it's relevant to the scene. But you're probably not going to include things like dialogue, direct thoughts, or descriptions. You're probably going to want to sum it up into these 1 to 2 sentence descriptions. I'll give you some examples here. So, for example, this is from my book, I Speak Boy. One scene in the manuscript is Emmy tries to set up Harper with her crush at the carnival. It goes horribly wrong and she's humiliated. So I put that into a quick one-sentence description. Emmy and Harper are the primary characters. The carnival is the primary setting. The actual event is the setting up and going wrong, and the emotion is the humiliation. Or another scene might look something short like this. Emmy apologized to Harper, worried she's still upset. Very, very quick. The key is the more concise you can be with your scene descriptions on your storyboard, the easier will it be for you to take a step back and see the whole story at once. See how all those scenes fit together and how they can be maneuvered around later. Seeing your story from this snapshot view, from this macro level view, will make it really easy to see it as a whole and diagnose any structure problems that you have. Another tip is to use shorthand whenever possible. So don't be afraid to be quick and dirty about it. Use your own shorthand. It only needs to make sense to you, so it doesn't really need to make sense to anyone else. You can organize your scenes in the order they appear, or using your favorite structure method. For example, if you're a Save the Cat fan like me, you might want to organize it into the 15 beats or 3 acts. You can also label your scenes with the beat names if you'd like. You can use index cards to do this, a virtual corkboard, or Fictionary. And that brings me to Christina. I'm going to pass it off to her, and she's going to show you how to do these 3 steps in Fictionary.
Okay. I don't know that I can talk that fast, but I'll give it a go. So if you stop sharing, I'll start sharing and we'll get right into it.
Oh yeah, I have to stop, don't I? Yeah,
yes,
there you go.
You have to give me permission over here. Thank you. Okay. So we are going to, I'll share my screen first. So super excited to talk about this because Jessica and I met last September-ish and discovered that we are really of the same thought on how to revise a story. And Jessica's put all this energy and knowledge into the course describing it, and then it falls right into Fictionary. So we're kind of excited to be here because now we're at a point where everybody's written their draft in NaNoWriMo. So super exciting moment, and congratulations to everyone. That's a fantastic place to be. And now we're going to look at how can you revise that. So to revise in Fictionary, you sign up for a free trial. There's 2-week free trial, no credit card. You can just go in and play around with it and see if it's for you. And if you decide that is the case, then you'll import your manuscript. So I'm going to give you a little demo on first just how to import so you can see what that is. And then I will, there we go. I'll show you. So this is look the other way. So what I'm going to do here, well, first I'm going to import. So you just, I've started every chapter with the word chapter, and you can start with headings, or you can use both, or you can split it out in Fictionary. But the easiest way is if you have the word chapter, Fictionary is going to break it out really quickly for you and organize your manuscript into chapters. And then the next thing we ask you is, do you have multiple scenes within a chapter? And if the answer is yes, then you'll put in a scene break character. I use a tilde for this model, this manuscript, but you can use anything. It has to be a unique character. So like stars, or not something you use like a question mark in your manuscript. And then Fictionary is going to import that. And so what it's doing now is we're using natural language processing, and it's scanning the manuscript. So the first thing it does is it breaks it down into chapters and scenes. And this is what Jessica's talking about in the storyboard. Then it's looking for your cast of characters. And this is Jessica's point about identifying your primary characters. Fictionary gets a little slow whenever I'm on Zoom, which is why you're seeing the little circle go around. And then once it's imported, it's going to show you it broken out into chapters and scenes. Now I have to get rid of this so I can see my screen. So what you're seeing here, okay, this is my novel Look the Other Way, and I'm going to actually edit it live through this process for everyone. I mean, not the whole thing, but I'm going to show you pieces of it. So I'm going to try and commit myself to doing this process in the time frame that Jessica has put forward, which is a little challenging. But I wanted to show you in a real life scenario how I work in my own app. So at this point, all we're looking for is, did it import properly? And I can see this is my first scene here on the side. It looks, that's about the right structure. I can go to my last scene. Look at the bottom and it's got the end. So that looks pretty good. So I'm just going to move forward and say, yep, it's imported fine. So this book has 54 chapters, 100 scenes, and just over 80,000 words. So that's a lot of words to revise. And this is where Jessica's process comes in handy. So the next thing Fictionary does is it shows you your list of characters. We use natural language processing, and so it's doing its best to pull out from the context of sentences who are the actual characters. So at this stage, you can update the cast of characters or not. And when you update something here, it does not touch the text of your manuscript. It's doing it so later we can look at some really interesting insights and visuals of how your characters play out in your story. So for example, here, Bahamas, I know that's not a character, so I can just delete it. I don't need it. I can set who my protagonist is. If I'm writing from single point of view, I can set that. I can view a character's first scene if I forget who they are. But for now, I'm just going to go past this. And we're going to end up looking at the overview. And so this is where you can kind of navigate yourself around the app. And here is where you can look at the insights of the story arc, word count per scene, and many others. We have videos at the bottom just to give you little tips. When you come in as a new user, there's also a tour to show you around the app. The evaluate is page is where you do your work. And then you can export to Word. You can export your scene notes, which Jessica has been talking about, your revision notes, or you can re-import if you want to switch your manuscript. You can also have up to 3 manuscripts in Fictionary too. So first thing I want to do, I'm just going to go over to the story arc. So you can see that, within a few seconds, Fictionary has, what it's doing now is it's actually analyzing the manuscript. And it's going to pull out the story arc for you, and it's going to show you the 5 key plot points from the inciting incident, plot point 1, the middle plot point 2, and the climax of your story. So that's the orange line, and then of the recommended story arc. And in the next lesson, we're going to go into much more detail here. I just wanted to give you a little highlight that you can see, where the scene is. If you can read this and see if you agree, if it's the scene, you can reset it. As you revise, these are going to move around. So for example, when I'm revising, let's say I don't think this is the middle and it's actually a scene way out here, I'm going to know I have a problem. Okay, so what I'm going to do here, I've lost my stop share button. There we go. And I'm going to go over here. All right, I am totally lost in Zoom. Okay, so I don't think, if I go here, Jessica, can you see a different version of StoryTeller?
You're not sharing anymore now.
I'm not sharing anymore. No. So somebody did that for me. Perfect. That's excellent.
Thank you, Ghost in the Machine.
Somebody did it. Some ghost did it. That's fantastic. Thank you there. I won't name names, but I know who it is. Okay, so what I want to show you here, it's a partially edited manuscript. And we're on the evaluate page. And so on the left side here, you're seeing I've done some scene names here, and you can see the full structure of my story. In the middle is where you edit. So if I wanted to type something here, if I was actually writing, which we're not going to do at this phase, this is where I would do it. And then on the right side here is where we can look at the story elements for character, plot, setting, and then notes. So we also have an advanced mode. I just want to show this for a second because for people, sometimes people want to come in and just do a little bit. And so we have 15 story elements. Sometimes they want to look at the whole thing. So we're going to look at that today. So first of all, we're going to talk about step 1 in the read through. So what I did was I just clicked the little arrow here to get rid of this left column. I don't want it right now. When I started, this whole thing would be empty. And so what I would see, I would read my scene, and then I would make my revision list. And so what I've done here is I've read this scene. I've got some things I want to change in the scene. And so I just noted them down while I was reading. And so you can just scroll and read here, make your revision notes right here. And at this point, it's just a revision list. Then if you want to go through, you can use these buttons here, or you can click here to click through scenes, and you just go scene to scene to scene and make your revision notes as you're reading and trying to do this in 1 to 2 settings. So I want to go and have a look at scene 3. So this is the point in Jessica's process where she says, okay, so you have all of your revision tasks down, and then she broke it up into your story level revision, your scene level, and your page level. And so in my story level revision for my book, when I read through this the first time, I realized the timing doesn't work. And so I've got to fix up my scene order a little bit. And so now this is going to impact more than one scene. So I put it under story level revision. And the other thing I realized is, according to Jessica's teaching, I had the wrong person stating the theme for my protagonist. And so I put a note here that, okay, fix that. And it's got to come out of this scene into a different scene. So that's a story level revision. Then I also wrote on the scene level, just a few things that I want to update in this particular scene. And then I'd written paragraph 2 is clunky, rewrite it. I don't like how it is. So I didn't touch it. I really didn't touch it, Jessica. I just left it as it is up on the screen for everybody to see my clunky writing to go through this. So that gets us through step 1, which was rip through your novel and just write your revisions. Step 2, break it out into these 3. And you can, up here, you can export scene notes so that you can take all of these out and put them in a Word document. And so if you wanted to do it before you break it out, you can do that. You can leave it in here. You can do it after you break it out into the 3 tasks. It's whatever you feel comfortable as the writer to do. And then we get on to step 3, which is building the storyboard. And here's where the story elements come into play. So first we're going to look at the characters. And one of the things Jessica said is, who are your primary characters? And so what we do here is Fictionary has pulled out the characters for each scene and linked them to the scene. And so in this case, Bobby's actually dead. So I know that he's really not in this scene. So we're just going to move him over to a character mentioned. He doesn't get a spot. And we're left with Debbie, Lance, and Shannon, who are in this scene. And so what this is going to do at the end is it's going to show you, we have an insight that shows you how many characters are in each scene, how many scenes these characters are in, the order they appear, the balance of it. And so you can start really looking at whether you need all your characters, are they in the right place. But we'll do that in a later class. I just wanted to hold here for a second that we have a way to list the characters and link them to scenes. And you can also, if you remember, if you want to add a scene, you can go to the overview. Oops, I gotta move my bar. And you can go back to the character insights. Sorry, I have the bar in front of me. You can go to the overview and go to the cast of characters. And that will allow you to update that cast. So I'm just going to bounce back to, I now have a pen. Okay, so then you'd think I didn't know how to use a computer. Why is that not doing anything? There we go. Sorry, it's that bar in my way. You know, the one that shows up. Okay, so the next thing Jessica mentioned was major events. And here we've got 3 story elements to help you with that. And the first is the scene name. And you can see here, I've done a little bit of Save the Cat here and put up, the opening image, the setup, the catalyst, the debate, because I like the Save the Cat method too. You don't have to do that if you prefer not to. You can do anything you want on your scene name. And this is your description, so you know just by looking quickly through this list what your scene is about. And then the other 2 elements that go with this are the scene middle. So in this scene, what you're looking for is that turning point in the scene. And here Lance is putting pressure on Shannon. They're looking at a house. She doesn't really want to buy it. He wants to buy it. And he's putting pressure on. And the turning point is she starts to see some good things in the house, trying to convince herself. And the climax is she has to make a decision on the spot whether they're going to make an offer on the house. And so if you look at every scene, you've got your major events on your scene flow. And from there, we'll look at the visualize page. And here I want to show you the story map. And it's one of my favorite You can do a full screen. It will show you every story element in there. But for the sake of time, I'm going to skip that, and I'm going to show you. So here's the default list that shows up: characters, point of view, scene name, location. And I don't want those. What I do want in here is I want my scene name. Sorry. There we are, scene name. And then I want my scene middle and my scene climax. And so here I can see my opening image. I can see my scene middle, so Lance puts pressure on Shannon, and I can see my scene climax. And so now I can see my storyboard for each scene all the way across my novel. And you can see I haven't gone all the way across. I didn't want to cheat too much and get ahead of the game. The next thing Jessica mentioned was setting. And so here you can put the key setting for the scene. So you don't want to put too much detail here. It's just the one that has the most relevance to that scene. And then you'll end up with the full list of scenes. And again, you can use the insights to evaluate them. And then the last thing Jessica mentioned for the storyboard was important emotions. And here you can use the impact on the point of view character, which in this case is Shannon, or the protagonist if the scene is, if Shannon wasn't the protagonist, but you want to show an impact on her. And here you put the emotion that you want to come across in the scene. And if you can't find it, then you either leave it blank or put a big X to remind yourself to fix it. And the other thing I should have mentioned here too, so if you come to a point where you look at the middle and you think, I don't have a turning point, leave this blank. And when you look at the story map, those are the scenes that you need to revise. Or if you don't really have a climax, same thing, leave it blank. And then the story map becomes your storyboard to show you where you need to do your revisions. So here, I think I have it, it's okay. But if it was blank, I don't, or I can put an X, whatever you like to use. But it's your way of making a revision plan without actually doing any revising for the reasons that Jessica said. I think that's the key things I've covered from what you covered. Really, a couple of things I want to stress. One is the read through without making changes is really, 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 really important. Setting yourself up for the revision so you have it all organized, also super important. And so what we're going to do in the next course is we're going to look at these things in a little more detail so that we can show you then how you actually start making changes. So if you come to the next session prepared with this, then you can start making your changes. And I think one will be really fun, but also, you know, kind of super eye-opening. So I'm going to turn it back to Jessica, and we can, she'll finish off and we can go to a Q&A. Jessica, you're on mute.
Thank you, Christina. That was awesome, is what I said. Thank you. That was awesome. So yes, so exactly what Christina said. If you prepare your manuscript in the way that we've just explained, you will have the start of a really organized, structured revision plan that then you can go off and actually start revising your novel in a really organized fashion that will keep those feelings of overwhelm and fatigue at bay. So here are the things that you should do before the next session. If you want to follow this plan with us, complete your hands-off read through and take your notes as you read. Organize those notes by revision level. Those revision levels, those notes are the start of your revision plan. Build your first draft storyboard, because what we're going to do in the next workshop is we're going to show you how you can start manipulating that storyboard, figuring out where the structure is going awry, how to fix it. And that is going to also contribute to your revision plan. How do I actually revise this structure? So having that storyboard already ready to go of your first draft, not what you're planning to do, but of your first draft, will help you eventually plan your storyboard for your next draft, which is also a big part of that revision plan. So those revision notes, the storyboard, these are the building blocks of your organized revision plan. What? Mm-hmm. Oh, I'm sorry. I'm not sharing my screen. Whoops. There we go. Now I'm sharing.
I knew that you were supposed to share your screen there. I didn't say anything. Sorry about that.
Oh, that's okay. That's fine. This is what I said. So basically, these are the 4 steps. Now you can see them of what you should do before our next session, which is the hands-off read through, the notes, organizing your notes, building your first draft storyboard. And then if you'd like to join us on the NaNoWriMo forums, you can share your progress there, tell us how it's going, what your challenges are. We're going to be poking in there and answering questions that you might have as you go through this process. 1 second. The next webinar, the next class is on February 9th at 3 o'clock. So exactly 2 weeks. That's how much time you have to get these steps down and start building that revision plan and setting yourself up for success. Remember, as you're working through these steps, I have that free revision Kickstart guide on writingmastery.com/nowwhat. And you can download that. It'll walk you through all of these steps with a lot more examples and details. So be sure to download that if you want some extra help. Okay, so for our next workshop, as we've been alluding to, we are going to be working on the story level revision, also called the developmental edit. And the steps you're going to take over the next 2 weeks from today's class is going to set you up for success for that first edit, that first round of revisions, the developmental edit. You're going to learn how to analyze your story for problems like structure problems, pacing problems, character development problems, world building issues, and all of this stuff that you're analyzing and finding is going to go into that revision plan, so that when you actually start revising, you're revising with an organized list, with a set storyboard of what you want your story to look like, and just a feeling of confidence is so key. So you're going to get strategies and tools for how to fix these issues, so that can all go into that revision plan for your first level revision of the story level. All right, so as we mentioned at the beginning of the webinar, we have these great offers. If you'd like to learn more, dive deeper into the revision process, and also support NaNoWriMo at the same time, my Writing Mastery Academy includes the complete novel revision course, this is taken from. I also have a Save the Cat course on novel writing. I have a fast drafting course. I have lots of different courses that you can actually get a free preview if you go to writingmastery.com/nowwhat. And if you're interested in getting the full access to the courses, we have these coupons for you to save a little and help support NaNoWriMo. And Christina, I think you want to talk about yours again.
Yeah, sure. So yeah, we're actually giving $70 off an annual. So we match the annual for Writing Mastery Academy. So it's only $130 a year. There you go. Look at that. I knew I did something good there. And so the other thing you get with if you subscribe to Fictionary, we have a master class, and it's about how to use Fictionary. So it comes with it that it gives you all the knowledge you need as you're going through your story. So a lot of the stuff we covered today really quickly is in there. And we have in-app videos as well that show you how to use each element, what each element is about. And so we got 2 types of videos. One's the theory, and one is the actual, how do you use it within Fictionary? So there's little question marks, which I should have shown you, that you can find those videos and see really quickly when you're looking at the different elements, just to help you as you go through, because there is so much to do. It's hard to remember it all. So it's all in there for you. So we're super excited if you want to try it. 2-week free trial, see what it does for you. And I'd love to hear about it on the next session or in the forum too.
All right.
Thank you so much. That was so amazing. And I'm just picking up on keywords here. I love the word confidence. I think you got to have confidence with revision. And this, just hearing you guys gives me so much more confidence, and organization. This is something that people forget with revision, is that being organized, like you both said, really helps a lot. So thank you so much. And thank you for that very nice offer to NaNoWriMo writers. I again invite everyone to check out your tools. And we've got some questions here, and we're at the 3:55 mark. So I was wondering if you guys can stay. Let's do at least 10 minutes of questions.
Sure,
will that work?
Yeah.
And thank you for submitting your questions. And thank you also for answering questions in our forums. And if Catherine hasn't already posted the link to the forum thread, I'm going to ask her if she can do that in the YouTube chat. Otherwise, go to our forums, and it's in the sponsors section of the forums, where there'll be a thread for you guys. And I'm going to put on my trusty glasses here. There's one question here that I think we can answer together, or 2 of them. two questions about importing into Fictionary. One person wanted to know if you could import a manuscript from YWriter, and the other one is converting a manuscript from Scrivener to Fictionary. So what are the, how do you import things, Christina?
Yeah, so I know more about Scrivener. I love Scrivener. I've written several novels in Scrivener. So they have a compile button, and when you compile from Scrivener, it will put the word chapter at the beginning of each chapter, and it will put scene break characters in for you. And they will export it to a docx and go straight into, then you can import straight into Fictionary. I don't know how YWriter does it, but I suspect you can export to at least a docx file. And really that's what we need. And if the word chapter isn't there, then it needs to be added for each chapter, et cetera, to actually make it import properly.
Okay, great. And here's a question, since this is kind of the homework for next week, or the February 9th, I will say next week, next webcast.
You need to.
This comes from Ashley, who asks, how do you go from the general list of revision notes to organizing them by level? So just manually?
So there's a couple ways you can do it. I mean, it really depends on where you keep your notes. If you're keeping them in a Word document or in just a list, then yeah, you're going to have to organize that list. The best way to do it is to actually ask yourself those questions of, does this idea or this fix affect the whole story, just this scene or chapter, or just this page? And that's how you can kind of start to sort them out. And as Christina showed, you can actually export those notes straight from Fictionary into a different format if you'd like to manage that list in a different format.
Yeah, and when it comes out of Fictionary, it puts it chapter and scene, so you can see what chapter and what scene exactly it goes to. So if you're the type who likes to have a printed copy beside you, that's great. You can do that too if you want the whole thing there. Just you can see it visually. Everybody has a little bit different way of how they organize things.
It essentially, just to give you kind of a little hint of what you'll be doing with it in the next phase, is that list is going to be basically the foundation of your revision plan. So any sort of ideas you have for structure, you're going to play that out on your next draft storyboard. You're going to manipulate your storyboard to reflect any ideas you have about structure. Any ideas that are on your list that don't necessarily apply to the storyboard, like maybe flesh out this character X, that might not work exactly on a storyboard. So you're going to want to keep that in a list. So your revision plan is going to consist of what your storyboard will look like for your next draft, plus your list of tasks. So this is just your starting point for creating that list of tasks.
Mm-hmm. I love that process. And the 3 different levels. This one comes from Annie Manassian, who asks, how do you know when you're done with the draft and ready to revise? This is a big question that maybe goes beyond your tools. I don't know. Says, I feel like I'm doing some of this type of thinking now to fill in holes or rewrite the opening, et cetera, on the first draft. And she's this is from a question from a pantser who writes out of order. Just throw a curveball in there.
Yeah. So I'll give in my 2 cents, and Christina, if you want to add anything. So I'm a big fan of fast drafting. I have a whole course in my academy called Fast Drafting. And essentially it's just getting all your ideas down on the page, no matter what order you write them in, no matter if they're making sense, no matter if there's big plot holes. And then once you sort of have what you think is a story, then you start applying the strategies of the revision process to what you have. So if you are writing out of order, if you have giant gaps, it just means that your story level revision is going to require a little more work than somebody who perhaps wrote a more I don't want to say finalized, but a more complete first draft. You can really start this process whenever you want. I would probably recommend that you have at least what you think is going to be the ending of your story written and what you think is the beginning. But even if you don't, being able to look at it on the storyboard is really going to help you figure out, oh, I don't start in the right place. I don't have a satisfactory ending. I don't have a good midpoint. So you could start this process right now with what you have, and it will help it will help reveal the things that need to be done for the next draft.
Yeah, and the exciting thing about it for me, so I find when I'm editing with an organized process that's making me ask questions, I get really creative. That I'm a pantser too. I just like to write my first draft. I did a novel in NaNoWriMo that I love to do that. It's super exciting, but then you have this big blob of first draft that you don't really even know if you have a story. And so when you use it in Fictionary, it's exactly what Jessica said. You just go in with your story and you work through the process. And what Fictionary will do for you, and we're going to cover this in the next lesson, is that it will show you when you have a solid structure. You can visually see it on your story arc. And so you'll know, okay, I've got a story with all the key points in generally the right place. Time to move on to the scene by scene editing. And when you go through the story elements, you'll see the same thing. And so it gives you a way of knowing, okay, I've got that, I can move on. And so it's a really visual process to do that. If you work outside of Fictionary, that's fine too. And then you're going to be using Jessica's checklists to go, have you done all these things? Have you checked that your scenes are in the right place? Do you have your key scenes? And you know it. And it's a iterative process that, you know, there's such a wide range of draft, but you'll know when you get to the end whether it's good or not.
But the mystery of knowing is part of it. Yeah. Well, hey, this is a question. Two people asked different types of questions here. So when you're writing, especially in a genre, there are expectations of length for the novel, especially if you're wanting to get that novel published. And so one person's question is, what advice do you have for revising if you're under the word count for your genre? And another person asked, what if you're over the word count, and noted that her manuscript is 206,000 words. So how do you revise with those word count expectations?
Yeah, it's a duology.
It's a trilogy there.
Well, I sort of have two kind of very high level notes about this. For underwriters, look at your scenes and how they're connected. Does one scene flow into the next? Does every character's choice, is it set up with the right motivations? I find that people who underwrite, they sort of jump from plot point to plot point, and there's very little connection between the scenes, and that's fine. Again, first drafts, we're all just getting the ideas down, but making sure that the proper motivations for everyone's choices are set up, that can really help you develop the story into, you know, something that's the right length. That being said, I am never a fan of filling pages just to fill word count quotas. Every page, every scene, every word should be worth something, and it should do something. It should have a purpose. This is something I go in very deep into in the revision course. But so, you know, never fill pages just to fill pages. But if you're finding that your characters, you know, are not fleshed out, they're making decisions that the reader doesn't understand, your world building has you know, aspects of it that don't really make sense. These kinds of things are signs that you have underwritten. For those who have overwritten, a lot of that has to do with trimming back subplots and trimming back side characters. Those are the first kind of thing that I start cutting when I'm overwritten, is like, okay, the character's now got this whole subplot with, you know, the lady down the street that she has this big fight with, and it keeps going and going and going. Does that really do anything to the story? Probably not. And one thing that I teach in my revision class is what's called the lift out test. And that is, can you pull out a side plot or a side character? If you pull them out of the story, what's left behind? Does it have like a huge vortex of plot problems and all these threads that don't connect just because you removed this one side plot? If the answer is yes, if you've left behind a big vortex of problems, that means that that side plot was actually necessary to the plot, and it interwove with other things, and therefore it had really good purpose for being there. If, on the other hand, you remove that character or that side plot and everything else sort of just still works the same, that means that side plot and that character wasn't actually interwoven in any organic or meaningful way in your story, and it can probably go. So looking at those side plots and those side characters first is a great way to start trimming down and making sure that every side plot, every side character is actually worthwhile in your story.
So I'll just add quickly to that. So I'm an underwriter, and so for me, when I'm using Fictionary, I use the setting tab because I tend to underwrite on description. I love to get the story out, and then you're like, hey, what's that person look like? Hey, there's no objects in this scene. Hey, there's no senses in this scene. Look, there's no weather. Like, and so I use the setting elements to go, you know, did I use objects? Did I use all the senses? Can I use weather? Is there something I can do with it? And so that fills it in for me. The other thing I see when I'm editing other people's books is the underwrite sometimes happens when there's key scenes missing. So I have edited a novel that didn't have a climax, just kind of ended. You think, well, there needs to be a climax there. And so you can look at the key scenes and go, do I have all 5 key scenes? And do I have the appropriate word count for them? Is it long enough to satisfy the reader? Is there enough action? And you can also look at things like, well, if there's a goal, is there conflict against that goal? Or is it just the character going through the goal? And you can look, and again, there's in Fictionary, we have all those elements to go, well, I have a goal, but there's no conflict. Well, I could write in the conflict, or there's no scene middle. And so you can look at all the different story elements to help you flush it out in the right way. Because what Jessica said is exactly right. Don't fill it, because that's boring. People just know it gets boring. You have to look at the right ways. And I want to say something on the overwriter. So I worked with other writers who have like 200,000 words. Fantastic. What if I kind of said it in jest, but what if you looked at your book and look, are there 3 stories in there? Like, is there a point where you could have a book, look around the 80,000 word mark, 70 to 90, whatever, look in there and see, do you come to a natural place where you could start a second book? And then again for the third book, because wow, you've got all those words. And instead of trying to squish it into one book, what if you actually have 3? And like, wouldn't that just be an amazing thing?
Those are great
3 for
answers.
the price of 1.
Exactly.
Right, like you've written it. Yeah.
It's worth considering. And what I'm thinking, it's 4:07 now. And I was going to ask you guys, if I take the questions that haven't been answered here and put them in the forums, can you answer them there? Sorry to put you on the spot, but I was thinking we can't get to them all. And I thought I would end with this question, which kind of riffs on what you were saying, Christina. The question comes from Natasha, who asks, how can we think about revising a novel, but also plan for the larger arc of a trilogy?
You want to take that first, Jessica?
Yeah, sure. So the kind of key piece of advice I have for people writing first books in a series when you're revising the series, one is to make sure that your primary conflict for that book is resolved, but that you have introduced a larger conflict that will follow the entire series. The same goes for the arc of the character. Character arcs over multiple series usually have sort of a larger problem that needs to be fixed, and then smaller steps to get there. So if you look at something like The Hunger Games, the whole capital and the whole structure of this world is the major problem. President Snow sort of represents that. He's not defeated in book 1, he's defeated in book 3. Sorry, spoiler. But the first step to defeating the capital is for Katniss to become a rebel. The second step is for her to, come into her rebelness, and the third step is for her to accept who she is as the Mockingjay. So those are all multiple steps to get to that big conflict. But you'll notice that the Hunger Games did end at the end of the first book. So did the second, whatever it's called, Quarter Quell, ended at the second book. Those were the individual conflicts of the book. So you never want to leave your readers hanging on the conflict for that book. You always want to leave them hanging on the larger arc of the conflict. So I think that's one mistake people I want to do a cliffhanger, so they don't resolve anything from the first book. You definitely want to have some sort of resolution, but you want to leave an open-ended, larger arching conflict for the rest of the series.
Yeah, so I'll just add to that. All great stuff. So I've edited a trilogy, and what we did together with the author is we had the story arc for book 1, story arc for book 2, story arc for book 3. And so you have your 5 key scenes, summarize them in a short thing of the inciting incident in book 1 is this, in book 2 it's this, in book 3 it's this. And when you look at the story arc across the trilogy, you look at, did the inciting incident mirror the climax of the third book? So book 1, you're looking for that mirror of, okay, did I answer my story question? Is it the opposite of what it is in the inciting incident? Go all the way over to book 3 and look at that too. And so if you've already written it all, you can go through, pull your story arc out, and then you just, you could have a great big thing on your wall if you want of story arc, story arc, story arc, story arc. And then you have the whole arc. And by writing down a summary of each key plot point for each book, and then what you think the inciting incident is for the whole story and putting it together is a great way to really look at a series. And of course, to do that, you have to have all the books written. before publishing the first one, because once it's published, it's published. But you can, if you're lucky enough that you've got all 3 written, then you can do it that way.
Thank you so much. That was fantastic. This whole hour was fantastic. And there's more to come, everybody. So the next webcast is Wednesday, February 9th, same time, 3 o'clock Pacific. That is just 2 weeks from now, which will be part 2. So to do your homework, check out and think about what Jessica and Christina have imparted today. I did want to say thank you to you both, because you've not only been NaNoWriMo writers, you've been NaNoWriMo supporters in so many different ways. And I didn't mention this at the beginning, but your companies have both sponsored NaNoWriMo multiple times and helped us give this gift of creative magic. So really appreciate you. And thank you to everyone for coming today and wanting to learn about revision. We've got more to come. So we'll see you at the next webcast.